A controlled experiment in psychology is a research design in which one or more variables are systematically manipulated to observe the effects on other variables while keeping certain factors constant. The goal of a controlled experiment is to test hypotheses and establish cause and effect relationships between variables. Controlled experiments are a fundamental part of the scientific method and are widely used in psychological research to investigate various aspects of human behavior and cognition. Here are key elements and steps involved in a controlled experiment in psychology. Elements of a controlled experiment. Independent variable, IV. The independent variable is the variable that the researcher manipulates or controls in the experiment. It is the factor that is believed to have an effect on the dependent variable. Dependent variable, DV. The dependent variable is the variable that is measured or observed in response to changes in the independent variable. It represents the outcome or behavior that the researcher is interested in studying. Control group. The control group is a group of participants in the experiment who do not receive the experimental treatment. The purpose of the control group is to provide a baseline against which the effects of the independent variable can be compared. Experimental group. The experimental group is a group of participants who are exposed to the experimental treatment or manipulation of the independent variable. The researcher observes how the dependent variable changes in response to this manipulation. Random assignment. Participants are randomly assigned to either the control group or the experimental group. Random assignment helps ensure that any individual differences among participants are equally distributed between the groups, reducing the possibility of confounding variables. Experimental conditions. The experimental conditions involve the specific treatments or conditions that participants in the experimental group are exposed to. The conditions should be controlled and standardized to isolate the effects of the independent variable. Controlled environment. The experiment is conducted in a controlled environment to minimize extraneous variables or factors that could influence the results. This includes controlling factors such as lighting, temperature, and other environmental conditions. Steps in conducting a controlled experiment. Formulating a hypothesis. The researcher starts with a clear hypothesis that specifies the expected relationship between the independent and dependent variables. Experimental design. The researcher designs the experiment, specifying the conditions, variables, and groups involved. This includes deciding how the independent variable will be manipulated and how the dependent variable will be measured. Random assignment. Participants are randomly assigned to either the control group or the experimental group. This helps ensure that any pre-existing differences among participants are equally distributed. Implementing the experiment. The experiment is carried out according to the planned design. The independent variable is manipulated, and data are collected on the dependent variable. Data analysis. The collected data are analyzed to determine whether there are statistically significant differences between the control and experimental groups. Statistical tests help assess the reliability and validity of the results. Drawing conclusions. Based on the data analysis, the researcher draws conclusions regarding the effects of the independent variable on the dependent variable. The findings contribute to supporting or rejecting the initial hypothesis. Peer review and replication. The results of the experiment are subject to peer review, and the study may be replicated by other researchers to validate the findings. Replication is crucial for establishing the reliability of experimental results. Controlled experiments in psychology provide a systematic and rigorous approach to testing hypotheses and advancing scientific knowledge in the field. They help researchers identify causal relationships and contribute to the development of theories that explain and predict various aspects of human behavior and cognition.